everybody, it's Brittany. So today we're going to talk about the first aphorism of Hahnemann's Organon of Medicine. Now, if you title something the Organon of Medicine, you'd think you would start with talking about medicine. But no, he starts by talking about the physician in the first aphorism, which is also interesting because in the Medicine of Experience, which was the precursor to this work, he never mentions the physician. He just starts talking about medicine. But anyway, in the Organon, he chooses to start with the physician. So the first aphorism, really, he just tells physicians to stop monkeying around and start making people better. Now, of course, Hahnemann says it a bit more formally than that. So according to the Dudgeon translation of his 6th edition of the work, the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, or to cure as it is termed. Now, in a relatively typical Hahnemann fashion, he has this short, nice little statement that is followed by a nice long footnote, which is largely a rant against the establishment. The footnote is his mission is not, however, to construct so-called systems by interweaving empty speculations and hypotheses concerning the internal essential nature of the vital processes and the mode in which diseases originate in the interior of the organism, whereon so many physicians have hitherto ambitiously wasted their talents and their time. Nor is it an attempt to give countless explanations regarding the phenomena in diseases and their proximate cause, which must ever remain concealed, wrapped in unintelligible words and an inflated abstract mode of expression, which should sound very learned in order to astonish the ignorant, whilst sick humanity cries in vain for aid. Of such learned reveries, to which the name of theoretic medicine is given, and for which special professorships are instituted, we have had quite enough. And it is now high time that all who call themselves physicians should at length cease to deceive suffering mankind with mere talk, and begin now instead for once to act, that is, to really help and to cure. Now notice that I made each sentence a separate paragraph. It wasn't like that originally. I just think it's easier to read that way. Also, you really appreciate how friggin' long and complicated his sentences are. And that's not a translation thing. They actually just were long and complicated. I actually read somewhere, there's a Stephen Decker who translated a version of the Organon. So it's not the translation I have in this, but a different translation, who said that you could tell whether or not somebody was healthy by whether or not that they were smart enough to follow the ridiculously complicated sentences that Hahnemann had. If they couldn't follow those sentences, then maybe they needed a remedy to help with their cognition. I don't know. But certainly you sort of have to be in great health to follow along. Now notice that the footnote is also a continuation of the aphorism. So in the aphorism itself, Hahnemann says what a physician's purpose is, and in the footnote it says what it is not. So in this way, he makes the aphorism more clear, and this is quite common in the Organon. He will have the aphorism, and then in the footnote, either there are examples to illustrate what he's talking about, he will take a specific part of the aphorism and break it down a little bit more, he will let loose a little bit more in the aphorism. He keeps things sort of buttoned up for the most part, and then really lets the medical establishment have it in the footnotes. Just be warned. So I don't think the purpose of the aphorism is really to define what a physician is. In other words, a physician is not defined by the fact that they make somebody better. I think the purpose of this aphorism is to define the purpose of a physician, as in, why do we have physicians? Why do they exist? Why are they a profession? And the purpose, he's saying, of a physician is to make somebody better, not sit on a nice high fancy chair and theorize about why people get sick, or to impress their patients with their superior intellect, and the patient never gets better. The point is to actually do something and to make people better. I think that you can see that by the fact that in the footnote, he's not saying that the people who have been theorizing and trying to find causes of disease and, having that get fancy professorships and all this stuff, they're not physicians. They're still physicians. He's just saying they're bad ones. So again, he's not defining what makes a physician, but what the point of being a physician is. The wording of high and only mission is sometimes translated as the highest and only calling, or the physician's highest calling. Right off the bat, Hahnemann has created a hierarchy of callings or duties for a physician, where curing people is at the top and everything else is below. And if you think about it, actually, this is a very interesting way to set up the whole book, because this whole book, you know, there's areas of philosophy, there's theories, there's tirades, there's also a lot of practical stuff about how do you take a case, how do you give a medicine. And if you think about it, by having this aphorism first, he's setting up the book to say everything is subservient to making people better. It doesn't matter if my theory's wrong, because the point is to make people better. And the whole reason you should do my dosing strategies because I think it makes people better. He's set this up from the get-go as this being the purpose of everything that comes next. Now, some people get hung up on the word mission because in English, mission has a bit of a religious connotation. Think of a religious mission, that kind of thing. However, the original German is Beruf, which as far as I understand, does not have any sort of religious connotation. You can translate it as calling, job, occupation, profession, that kind of thing. So I really don't think he intended any sort of religious overtone. Now, the last bit of translation debate that I'm going to get into with this is this idea of healing versus curing. So some authors will translate it as healing in this aphorism, some will translate it as curing. In English, there's a connotation with curing that it's a process that happens after you have an intervention. So you go to the doctor for an infection and they give you antibiotics and you are cured, as opposed to if you fell off your bike and you scraped your knee and then the scratch healed itself. Now, in German, the term for both is the same, heilen, which is why some people will translate it as heal and some people will translate it as cure, right? And it's essentially, we have two words for one German word. So Stephen Decker believes that the connotation that Hahnemann intended was to cure, which of course makes sense in context of the aphorism, because the whole aphorism is about the physician doing something, so it wouldn't necessarily actually make a lot of sense to stick the word heal in there, because it would sort of imply that the physician's intervention didn't actually do anything, the body just did it on its own. But anyway, and all of this information I get from Stephen Decker in the glossary to Wenda Brewster O'Reilly's version. So the footnote sets the stage for a lot of things that we're going to talk about in future aphorisms. So this idea of theoretical medicine, finding the proximate cause of disease, trying to figure out the internal nature of disease, all of those as fruitless endeavors, which also I think is funny, because if you read Ken's lectures on the first aphorism, like half of his thing on the first aphorism is about how only homeopaths know the true cause of disease and allopaths are just out to lunch, which I just find amusing. So the whole point of this aphorism is really just that physicians should be curing people. It's the long and short of it. But, how do we cure people? And what does a good cure look like? And what does cure look like ever? How do we define when somebody's cured? Those are the topics of his next aphorisms. I told you it goes in a logical sequence. Alright, so I will see you guys next time. Bye.